Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Lionel Bergeron. Welcome to the Making Faces Communicating Feelings with Code workshop. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Scratch conference. I've been able to drop in a few sessions and just I love the work everybody's doing and everything that people are sharing. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to use Scratch Junior and computer science, integrate it into social emotional learning. But before we get started, I wanted to do just a quick little check-in with everybody. Here in New York City, we use one of our social emotional learning content called the Mood Meter, just to help teachers check in with students. And I thought I would check in with all the participants. The way the Mood Meter works is there's 4 quadrants. On the bottom, you have a rating of pleasantness, and on the left, you have a rating of energy. So high energy, feeling very pleasant, you're in the yellow. Low energy, but still pleasant, you're in the green. Unpleasant and low energy in the blue, and unpleasant and low energy or high energy in the red. Hopefully, everybody's on more of the pleasant side because of all the wonderful sessions they participated in today. But if you'd like to share what color section or region you're in, go ahead in the chat. We're monitoring that too. And if you can think of a word or a feeling or emotion to describe that particular, how you're feeling in that particular quadrant, that'd be great too. So just take, 10, 15 seconds and add that into the chat real quick. So, and we'll also take this opportunity to, so we got somebody checking is yellow. Great. Yellows. I love seeing the yellow and the green popping up in the chat. Perfect. Green. Yes. I also understand that this might be a little late for some people around the world, or still early for people. So definitely might be on the lower energy, starting your coffee in the morning, or just, a little past bedtime. But I appreciate everybody joining. So
a lot of green.
As I mentioned. What was that, Leslie?
A lot of green. I'm seeing a lot of green.
Great, wonderful. So as I mentioned, my name is Lionel Bergeron. I work with New York City's computer science education program, and primarily focused on elementary school implementation. And we have my co-presenter here, Leslie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Leslie Johnson, and I am a public school teacher. I have everybody from pre-K all the way to grade 5.
Great. And then we also have a couple of special guests called the Spotlight guests, who are going to help with the workshop today and give their feedback and their own experiences working with Scratch and Scratch Junior. And so we're going to start off with Aaron, if you'd like to start off. I think you're muted, Aaron.
Oh, that's funny. I'm Aaron Reuland. I'm the library media teacher, in Norwood Public Schools, and longtime Scratcher, active Twitter user at Mr. Reuland on both platforms. Excited to be here.
Great, and I'm not sure if Nomusa hasn't been able to join us yet, so I'm just going to go on to the next slide. So Ariam.
Hey everyone, my name is Ariam. I'm a design educator and Scratcher, and I work at the Stanford Design School.
Okay, great. And Mahmoud.
Hi everyone, I'm Mahmoud Aliamer. I am the elementary school curriculum specialist in the computer science department at Chicago Public Schools, and very excited to be able to join today. Thank you for having me.
Great. And so we're really excited to have these wonderful spotlight guests, as well as co-presenter Leslie, join us today for the session. Before we get started, we have a couple of reflection questions in traditional professional learning experience. Just kind of put us in the frame of mind of like what we'll be talking about throughout today's workshop. So first thing we want to think about is how can we use computer science to express ideas, right? Because, sometimes we talk about computer science, it's related to solving problems, but it's also a wonderful tool for expressing ideas and the things that we think about. And the second one is, how can we use computer science to help us communicate a feeling or emotion? Now, this is going to get a little more specific to the theme for today's workshop, So that way, keep it in the back of your mind as we go through some of these activities. So I just want to make sure, because I can see on swap card that the slide deck isn't being presented. Just checking in real quick. It's showing the group, but not the presentation. So another thing that I wanted to talk about today. So today's objectives related to those particular reflection questions are one, first, have fun and enjoy learning about computer science. I think that's one of the great things about Scratch and the Scratch conference, as well as Scratch Junior, is that it's a real fun and engaging way to learn about computer science. Also, today's objective is learn how we can use Scratch and Scratch Junior to express an idea. And finally, learn how we can use Scratch and Scratch Junior to help us communicate a feeling or emotion. Okay. So those are today's objectives. A quick overview of the agenda. We're going to just start off with thinking about and sharing out and brainstorming how we can use computer science to express those ideas and how we can use computer science to communicate feelings. Then we'll have an opportunity to do a little bit of creating using everyday items or objects, which might be significant to you or to someone in your family or your friends or your classmates, to create a face to express a feeling or emotion. And then we're going to move on. How can we take that face and use Scratch or Scratch Junior to animate it to be more expressive and better communicate that feeling or emotion? And then finally have some opportunity for the spotlight group as well as the participants to share what expression you created and see if we can do a little bit of guessing on what types of emotions or feelings everyone's expressing. And then finally wrapping it up with just a little bit, thinking past this particular activity and other ways we can use Scratch and Scratch Junior to express how we're feeling and other ideas. So how have you used computer science to express an idea? So this is for the participants as well as the spotlight group. Participants, feel free to add in your thoughts in the chat because we will be monitoring them. But I'll throw it out to somebody in the spotlight group. Can you think of an example of how you use computer science to express an idea? Anybody want to share?
I can go. I think I really love using computer science and Scratch in particular to express ideas through storytelling. And it's really fun to do that with students, to actually be able to create a story from your own perspective or a story that represents your lived experience. It could even be like an experience you had at school or at home in your neighborhood. And then code that in Scratch so that other people can engage with your story in a way like they haven't engaged with your story in the past. So I think that's like a really cool way to engage with coding and expressing ideas.
Yeah, that's a great example. It also makes me think about how excited students get when they have their own story to share. But then when they get into Scratch, they come up with even better ideas or like different ways to help share their stories. And I think you bring that in that point across well. Great. Anyone else from the spotlight group, or Leslie, do you want to share how an idea that you might be able to express through computer science?
I've had the kids do like public service announcements and different things, and just they have a great time being able to explore just different avenues of how they feel or social justice projects and different things that are important to them.
Yeah, that's great. I'm also looking at the chat and some people are talking about making art. Absolutely. Expressing art through computer science. That's definitely one. Social stories for autism. Yes, I was listening in on one of the sessions earlier today where they had the studios related to students with autism, and I thought that was a wonderful example of an opportunity for people to express their thoughts and ideas. So, great. All right, wonderful. Thank you. So kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. Not specifically an idea, but like, has anybody ever used computer science to communicate how you might be feeling? I know this also goes into the example from the chat of social stories. Sometimes reflect how we're feeling in those. But have you ever thought of a way to that you've shared something through computer science related to how you're feeling? The one idea
I've done a
pops up-
project. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Lionel.
go ahead, Aaron. No, go ahead.
I know one project I had a lot of fun with my students one year was we actually took emotional words and then used the words and animate the word to express that feeling. So if they had a nervous feeling, they might have the nervous text bouncing or word nervous bouncing around their screen. It was a great way for the kids to think about feelings and how you could express them.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's taking something like the animated name tutorial, but using it in a different way, specifically for like a feelings or emotions word. That's great. And that's actually one of the activities that we're going to talk a little bit about today. So great, perfect.
I have an unsuccessful attempt, but it was an attempt where
yes, perfect.
I was trying a project once where if you have all of these different text files from different authors, that you could write a program that would be able to write something in the style of that author, and try to tailor it to different emotions of like, oh, what if this person was writing like someone who was very angry or like someone who was extremely joyful. And I couldn't figure that part out, but I do think it's possible. And I think we'll get there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that actually goes into something that we'll be discussing too, is that there's different ways that we can express our feelings. So one of the points that Aaron was making is that if you have nervous, you want the word to be animated. So movements related to feeling nervous, but then also there can be other ways to reflect how we're feeling or emotion through text. So like the idea of everything in capital letters is often referred to as yelling, or bold means, you're trying to get your point across, that type of thing. So, great. Anyone else like to share before we move on to the next part of this session? I know that some people in the chat, games about healthy food versus junk food, sharing some of their one. Yes, I have made smiley faces. Great. Awesome. And then also the microbit was something that's somebody shared in the chat too, which is a wonderful physical computing device to help express feelings or emotions. Great. So where did this idea come from? So this was our first attempt with the coding with feeling, and it evolved into a unit of study for elementary school, but actually can be used through K-12, just depending on what type of platform and how intricate you want your projects to be. But we were working with a group called Sunset Spark here in New York City and Sunset Park. Wonderful team, Galen and Yadira, the animation of their family on the left there. They came up with this activity for our robots unit around coding either a dash robot or a sphero robot to reflect a particular feeling or emotion using movement, if it has colored lights, if it has sounds, and then coding that into the robot and then seeing if other people can guess what that emotion was being expressed. And it was actually it still is a really successful activity to do with students, but we evolved that into a unit. And so the coding with feeling unit identifies social emotional learning content activities that support the understanding of computer science and computational thinking. And what that means is, in the last few years, New York City Department of Education has emphasized the importance of social emotional learning and have made different curriculum and content available to teachers. And when looking through that, we recognize that there's tie-ins to computer science and computational thinking, such as some of the sub-concepts around computer science of decomposition, pattern recognition, as well as using computer science in a meaningful way, i.e. communicating how we're feeling. So in this unit, students have two opportunities: one to create a project where they communicate the feelings that they're having or emotions, and then another way to develop the second project is a way to support other students or classmates or even teachers with how they deal with their emotions and feelings. That example being like if you come in from physical education, you have to start math class, you might be really worked up, right, and wound up. So what type of project can use to help calm yourself down to get in the right mindset to start learning math after PE or lunch or something like that. So an example activity from this particular unit, unplugged, because we always talk about unplugged and online activities and the value of unplugged activities with computer science, is called emoji stories, and it's kind of based off of a Hello Ruby activity. And so in this activity, students create a story using emojis to describe a situation where they use a strategy to help manage their own feelings. And the emojis, as we talk about them, they're images like faces, food, weather, animals, and activities, and other activities that we use during text messages, emails, or online to communicate, right? It's in its way its own code. So we use emojis as code to express our thoughts and ideas. And so emojis are a way to share our feelings, like show humor or affection or in our messages, right? Like a smiley face or, a big, a laughing out loud or the little heart shape. And emojis have turned into a creative language of their own. So we're going to do a quick little test here with you. So this is an example of it. What do you think this emoji story is about? So just take a minute and look through the different emojis and the progression of them and see if you can come up with your idea of what this story might be saying or talking about. While we're giving a chance for people to think through this, somebody had asked in the chat, are these projects available? Yes. At the end, we'll share in the slide deck. The last slide has links to resources, which we'll talk about at the end of today's session. Okay. So would anyone from the Spotlight group like to take a guess at what this emoji story is saying or their interpretation of it? And I see some wonderful guesses in the chat. Anyone from the Spotlight group want to try?
Sure. It's clear. It's so raining, right? Then I'm sad that it was raining, but the sun comes out from under the clouds, and then I'm very happy because I can go to the beach.
Exactly. Great. Yes, definitely. So, and when we think about this related to the specific unit, and it's also wonderful because similar to computer science, everybody has their own way of doing something or their own interpretation of it, and that's great. And so definitely it's raining, which makes me sad. But I noticed that the sun's starting to come out, so I'm not going to let that sad feeling stay. So in order to get happy, I'm going to go to the beach and enjoy the sun that is now available. So yeah, definitely great. Thank you for sharing, Aaron. And I think some people also had that in the chat too, which I thought was really great. So, all right, great. So before we move on, one of the things to think about next is what are some other ways that in this unit, what are some other ways that we express how we're feeling? So what are some ways that we can express how we're feeling or our emotion? You can go ahead and put that in the chat. So we talked a little bit about like using emojis in like our text messages or our emails. What are some other ways? And it doesn't have to be technology based. It could be, just everyday human interaction. But what are some ways that we
I think a big one for me is walking. Like there's a sharp difference between walking calmly and walking when you're happy and walking when you're upset with something or walking when you have somewhere that you need to be. So there's the urgency. So a really physical motion might be one way that we can show our emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely walking is one of them. In the unit, there's actually a really great reference to a Go Noodle video from, I think the Blazer, I can't remember their name, but they talk about reflecting different emotions through the way that they walk. So yeah, that's definitely a perfect example. So we have body language. Any other ideas?
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Yep.
I'll add that many folks have captured this in the chat, but I really like to express my feelings through any sort of hands-on art, whether that's like drawing or painting. I really like to journal and do some creative writing. So if I'm just even like, coming up with a character who I can channel my emotions through, who's not me, like who's removed from me, that can be really fun and like therapeutic. So any type of hands-on art or any way to be creative really helps.
Yeah, wonderful. And that's a really good example of some of the strategies that we use to like, address the feelings that we're having, whether we need to shift them or express them to like get them out through journaling, or just capture them. And so we can remind ourselves of like how, we were feeling at a particular time. And then we have body language. And as you mentioned in the chat, there's some really great ideas. Some people are talking about memes, facial expressions, eyebrows, and getting specifically into the elements of the face, which is actually going to be perfect for the next part of today's activity and workshop. But before we move on, is there anything anyone else would like to share?
Yes.
Other ways, so we have body language and facial expressions. Go ahead, Leslie.
Somebody in the chat talked about using music, and absolutely that sets a mood. Yeah.
So sound, right? So the sounds that we either use to set a mood, as you mentioned, or the sounds that we make, like huffing and puffing, or, like giggling a little bit. So I have a 14-month-old, not 14-year-old, 14-month-old, and she's exploring all of her new sounds to express all of her wonderful thoughts and feelings. Some of them are very loud and high-pitched, and some of them are very soft and giggly. It just depends on which part of the day those come out, which can be, a challenge at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's very excited, when she's very excited. So great. So definitely. So we have things like facial expression, body language, using art or journaling, as well as sounds, or the music we listen to, or the music we might play, or the sounds that we might make. Great. Perfect. And so this unit kind of dives deep into each one of those things, and related to computer science. Each one of those things has patterns that we can then break down and recognize specific patterns, like for feelings that are happy, joy, excitement. What generalizations can we make about facial expressions connected to that, or sad, angry, disappointed? What generalizations can we make around sounds we typically make? Are there generalizations? Are there outliers? And then how can we use that information to bring it back to a particular project? So for this particular one, we're going to focus on facial expressions, which is one way that we can express how we're feeling or our emotions. And I kind of jump between feelings and emotions. There is a little bit of a discussion on like what's the difference between the two of them. For today, we're just kind of related them as both meaning the same thing. And so it does lead to a really interesting conversation that you can definitely have. So where did this making faces activity, communicating feeling through code, come from? So New York City Department of Education, CSforAll, is a partner with the Scratch Education Collaborative. And so over the past year, we've been participating in different workshops and sessions. And one of the earlier ones was presented by the Exploratorium. And so they had this activity where the participants as a group, we were making meaningful portraits by arranging everyday and symbolic objects into faces. And so by incorporating objects as a metaphor, it was really interesting thing about like the example they give, a bar of soap for your most bubbly friend, right? So how different objects can take on different meanings, and you can capture and communicate characteristics in a playful and visual way. So like when we talk, in the chat, they were saying like your nose or your eyebrows. So how could we represent like, angry eyebrows in a more creative, playful way? And so this was an activity dreamed up by artist Hannah Piven, I believe is the proper way to say his name. And the project supports looking at everyday objects in a different way, right? And so what we ended up doing, there's a Tinker Studio, and there's a link to all these activities from the Exploratorium. And so what we ended up doing was in this Scratch Education Collaborative session, trying to make our own faces. So we gathered a stash of objects to explore and make with and start moving around on a piece of paper. There were some inspiration examples on the Exploratorium's website. So things like a jar lid, balloons, Lego gears, and then they also had additional tips that we could do. And we created our own faces and then we shared them. And then we talked about the extension to this activity of animating it, right? And so like making it blink. And so, what are some of those things that we do, our facial expressions, or relating them back to the idea of animating the word nervous, like what represents nervousness, right? So like maybe a little like slight shake or something. Now, the examples that were given by the Exploratorium were things like 2-frame animation or stop motion animation. And then as a group, we talked a little bit about Scratch, right? And so the initial thought for this activity was just to create a face, right? So what we did here in New York City is like, well, how can we use that face to express a particular emotion? And so how can we use this activity to communicate feelings or emotion? So what we ended up doing is think about what feelings, first think about the feelings you would like to express with the making faces activity. And then think about what are some facial expressions that communicate that feeling. For examples, what do your eyes look like when you're happy or annoyed? What does your nose look like? Is it scrunched up? Are your nostrils flared? Or what does your mouth look like? Are you smiling like a soft smile? Or are you showing a lot of teeth? Or are with me, it's kind of hard to see sometimes because my beard gets in the way. But like, what's happening with your face when you're expressing that particular feeling or emotion? So what we'd like to do right now is take a few minutes for everybody to kind of try this on your own. You can just do it at your own workspace, at your desk, your kitchen table, if you're at your office, wherever you are, to kind of work through some of this initial activity that we did with the Exploratorium. So go ahead and look around your space and collect objects of all different shapes, sizes, and colors to help you express a feeling. So as I mentioned before, you might want to have a feeling in mind or an emotion. You might start just by collecting the objects and they might inspire you to what that feeling or emotion might be. And so take a minute or two to do that. And so once you've gathered that stash, and I'll give you a minute or two to do that in a minute, you're going to explore and make with it. So start moving the things around on a piece of construction paper or tabletop to make your face. And then you can even try things like asymmetrical arrangements to make unexpected or dramatic facial expressions. It doesn't have to be symmetrical, like one larger item for one eye and a smaller one for the other eye to kind of emphasize maybe like your kind of piqued interest by I'm trying to make weird faces on my camera right now, or like you're concentrating. And then when you're ready, you can take a picture of your face and think about how you might want to animate it. But that's what we're going to be doing for the next few minutes or so, just to give you an opportunity to kind of work through this idea. And so again, start just looking around your space and collecting objects. Now we have our spotlight group here, and we talked a little bit about this prior to today's workshop. And if anyone would like to share some of the objects that they might have thought of or like collected to create their own face, you can just hold it up to the camera. And if not, then I can also share some things too. So. Oh.
While people are working on getting their materials together, I did this with every grade from, pre-K all the way up to grade 5. And, just having them illustrate an emotion, we called it feeling faces. And then we had a gallery walk where we were guessing others' emotions, and just being able to label emotions accurately is such an important skill, for students, and, a life skill for everybody, being able to read each other's feelings. So it was really a lot of fun, and the kids really, really enjoyed it. They loved the gallery walk. They loved trying to guess the emotions and becoming emotion detectives.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to steal that from you. So Ariam, I saw that you held something up to the camera. Do you want to describe what you found or used in your own?
Yeah, I had this ball of yarn. I didn't unwind it. I used it as this little sort of ball that's sort of stitched together. So that was like really handy. I forget, what are these? These are like pipe cleaners. What are these called again? I always get the name wrong.
Yeah, pipe cleaner.
Yeah, I used a couple of these. And then I can't find where I had a coaster. I can't find it, but I used a coaster too for a coffee or tea.
Great. And then Mahmoud, I saw you had a nice little plate of things.
Yes, I used, and let me just move this out of the way, this plate and two, I think these are L wrenches, as well as some ground cherries and a piece of a pepper from the garden. And this, I don't know exactly what it would be called, but it's a holder and you put chopsticks in here. So it holds your chopsticks for you. And what I thought was like really interesting about kind of putting together the face is getting things that are all related to one another, and that way you can put a little bit of a story behind, because this is all tied to being able to go and garden and work with the plants and the soil and to be in the sunshine. So this all is kind of tied together with the theme, which I think is such a great aspect of this project.
I also think that it ties into, and I'm making an assumption here, but that's something that you enjoy. So it brings, a feeling of enjoyment to you to be able to work in the garden, so.
Coming around to it.
Yeah. It can also be frustration, because I've also done some gardening and it can be very frustrating, or perhaps like today where it's 100 degrees here in New York City, a little tiring. So yeah. Ariam, was there any particular feeling or emotion that you thought some of your objects might help you express?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just looked. Oh, sorry. Was it Aaron?
Aaron?
Ariam, and then go ahead, Aaron. We'll go after you. So yeah.
Sure. I wanted to capture like feeling frazzled. I don't know if that's a feeling. I think it is, but frazzled meaning like a little bit exhausted, but also like excited, exhausted. I'm probably not describing frazzled very well. I'll just say exhausted, and then also feeling calm. Those are the two emotions that I think my objects helped me sort of express.
Great. And Aaron?
Oh, I pre-made a project with nature stuff because I just love walking around and finding natural materials in the yard or in the park nearby. But I did just look over and saw this nice combo of eyes and mouth that are quite, I think, surprised.
Nice. That's great. And it's awesome. I just looked over at the chat, and some people are posting pictures of their own faces in the chat, which I think are spectacular. Especially I like the comb as representing hair, which I thought was a really cool idea in one of the pictures there. So yeah. So we're going to take about like 2 more minutes. I just want to kind of show a little bit more about like what it is that we're talking about here. So I've switched over to my Elmo camera. Can you see it? Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Great. So one of the things that I like to do is with that like maker mentality is I always like collect random objects. Some people think I'm a little kooky for it, but that's okay. And similar to what Aaron was talking about and Mahmoud, a theme of it. And so a lot of these objects are related to my daughter. So we've gone through some different things to see what she likes to eat. So we have these little tops for some of those like little veggie pouches that she likes to eat. So I might use those as eyes. This was from her first, she had this little unicorn hat for her first birthday, and one of the little flower petals fell off, but that was okay. And then similar to what you had, Mahmoud, an L wrench. This is what I used when I was putting together her crib. So this is just an idea, an example, very simple objects that have a theme. Now, when I put the L wrench down, it's frowning a little bit because it was very frustrating at first putting together the crib because they have screws and nuts and like very tight spots, and I find that very frustrating. But then I also think about like how it made me feel like who I was making this for or putting this together for. So I could easily take this and turn it upside down and changing the expression in something simple like that. So this is an example, very basic, of how you can collect some basic, random items and arrange them into a particular face, and kind of play around with it and think about what are some different ways I can express a feeling. Like this might be inquisitive because it kind of looks like a question mark almost, something like that. So a smirk versus a smile, that kind of stuff. So I might choose to take this and put the little winky, something like that. So there's different things that you can do. And I do love the examples that the Spotlight group was able to share. So, oh, this is wonderful. I'm sorry I'm not able to pay as much attention to the chat, but I know that we're looking at it, and there are some really wonderful examples being used. Some necklaces, some paper clips. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So now, once you have an idea of like what you've actually created, thinking about how can I animate this? So again, an example, when thinking about this too with our students, you can do this in a remote environment. If need be, collecting just images of random objects and then doing it on a slide deck, just having them arrange those objects onto a square. If they can't do it in person or they can't take a picture, there's definitely different ways you can take this activity and run with it. So, and so we've already talked about this, but what are some of the objects that collected to make the face? And again, people are using a protractor. That's great. I love seeing that in the chat. Great. And then you can arrange them around and come up with different faces. And again, just an example of a digital version of this. And then what you want to do is you take a picture of it. So you have your initial picture. Some people are sharing theirs in the chat. There's also a Padlet that I'll share the link in a minute, so that you can share your pictures that way too. And so then I didn't even have to ask. People started sharing their faces already. So here's a link to the Padlet. And it's just padlet.com/LD Bergeron /making faces. It's linked in the actual slide deck, which you can have available. And if you don't have a chance to do it today or right now, that's okay. Definitely share it. We'll keep that up for a while because I'd love to see what people create. And so how could I use my face to communicate a sad feeling? So if I think about my face right here, it's smiling. So one way to do is just animate it by moving it, the smile upside down. To make it look sad. So this is what we're talking about when we can manipulate or move our items around to communicate different feelings. And then maybe take a picture of that second one. And what you could do with this is, with that initial idea from the Exploratorium, is taking those two pictures and just doing a swap between the two photos, kind of trying to take the same frame and then just swapping back and forth creates a simple animation of smiling, frowning, smiling, frowning. But you can use stop animation to do that too. There's a lot of different free apps out there, education apps out there that allow you to do that. But what we really want to think about is like, how can we use Scratch and Scratch Junior to animate our face to better express that feeling, right? So as I mentioned, you might just have the two images. And one of the things that you can do is a costume change, right? So if you take each of those images and treat them like a sprite, you have the initial one of the smiling, and then you create a second costume for it, which is the frowning. And then you have some kind of action to animate it to go between costumes, right? So for the example in this particular one from the challenge cards is when the sprite clicked, switch costume to Rooster B, and then wait 0.3 seconds, switch to costume Rooster A, and wait 3 seconds, right? So it's basically the same thing you're doing. So you might say when sprite is clicked, switch to smiley face costume, wait 0.3 seconds or wait a couple of seconds, and then switch to costume frowny face, right? This is one thing that I love about elementary school computer science is I can say things like frowny face, which is just a lot of fun to do. So the example here, and I'm going to just show you real quickly, and these projects are linked in the chat. or I'm sorry, not in the chat, in the slide deck, but I'll just show you. Can you see the project? Okay, great. So if I click here, I just press the space bar. We'll click on the sprite. Sorry, not the space bar. So it's just going in between the two sprites. So if I go and like see inside, I can see I use that basic code from the challenge card. And if I click on my sprite and go to costume, I can see here are my two costumes, the smile and the frown. And all I'm doing to animate it is similar to that stop animation or the switching between two pictures, but just using Scratch to do that. There are some really other great ways to do this using Scratch and just using some of the basic tutorials. One of the important things about this approach to computer science is the students want to think of their own ways of expressing their feelings. And if they write out, similar to our conversation about like walking, like moving, or like our facial expressions, or even the items that we have when Ariam was talking about like her little bundle of, I was going to say twine, it's not twine. What is it?
Yarn.
Yarn, thank you. Twine, I just sound very old there. So, but using a little bundle of yarn, thinking about like, well, what can I do with this? Can I stretch it out? Can I maybe change the colors of it? Maybe animate it somehow? And then going like, okay, well, these are the things I want to do. Can I do it in Scratch? And so looking at some of the Scratch tutorials, like animating a sprite, or we talked about adding sounds or our voice to it, which I think is really valuable for our students. Or anybody to like add their own voice to it when talking about their feelings, or some of the little more complicated tutorials like animate a character, as well as simple things like adding a sprite or changing the size, like making it get bigger or smaller to emphasize a particular feeling. And so an example of that in the Scratch project that I originally showed. So now if I press the space bar, I've added some music to it. Some music to it and additional sprites of the hearts from the Scratch library itself to express a particular feeling of love, right? So there's a lot of really great options within Scratch itself. So I'm just going to leave that. The other thing too is I mentioned that if students don't have objects around them or they can't take a picture of it, you can use the sprites that are available to you already in Scratch. So this particular example, I just searched through some of the different sprites that are you can use, or you can even upload pictures that you download. But you know, this is again emphasizing maybe my own personal interests. So you know, I like sports like soccer or football or basketball. Especially with the World Cup coming up. I also recently re-watched all of the Harry Potter movies. So I have a little formula or potion bottle and the wizard wands as for eyebrows. And then the mouth is a rainbow just because I like rainbows. And so then animating this similar to it to communicate joy. Just gonna open this up. And then if I press the space bar, now I'm just animating the sprites themselves. So we definitely want to try to do this initially with objects, but if objects aren't available to you, there's other ways to do that and still keep those things that are meaningful to you, i.e. like sports or, you know, Harry Potter or just rainbows, you know. And so I'm just animated this particular one to represent joy. You can also do this, as we mentioned, using Scratch Junior to animate a face, using some of the simple tutorials available through the Scratch Junior website. I also know that we've talked a little bit about coding as a second language. Is that the Tufts curriculum? Coding as a second language or another language? I can't remember the official title. If anyone knows that, anyone remember what it's called? I'm not sure, but again, that curriculum offers some of these like tutorial-based things that we can do in Scratch Junior. So here's an example of that. So I took some objects from my desk at work and created a simple eyes, eyebrows, a nose, and then I actually drew in or created a sprite for the mouth. So when I animate this particular one, you know, I'm not animating the character itself. I'm actually animating, the smiley face, right? So just something simple like that, where I can, using both personal items and then so a character that I created myself. So we're going to have just an opportunity to kind of try this a little bit on your own. I know that we have about 15 minutes left in today's workshop. So I want to give some opportunity for you to do that. It's kind of going forward a little bit here. If you've created a project, we do have a Scratch Studio where you can share them. And as we give you about 5 or so minutes to try this on your own, we're going to just take a look at some of these, because I know some people from the group have already shared in the studio, and I just want to open this up real quick. And so
somebody put it in the chat. It's coding as another language, and they put the link in the chat. So thank you.
Great, thank you, wonderful. So I know some people had started adding some things in here. And Aaron, I know that you had mentioned you had put some, which one is your project?
Oh, mine is the talking nature face right there.
Perfect. Oh, awesome. Yeah. Oh, this is going to be good. Oh, okay, great. So I'm going to open this up. So here's an example of, I'm going to run the program first, and then if you want to just talk a little bit about the work that you did. Sure. So how do I start it?
So just press the green flag.
Okay.
And it should run on the green flag, I think. So there it goes. Yeah.
I love the acorn eyebrows, and they
yes. I love the pine needle's hair. Maybe I should try that. So
yeah.
So I'm just going to open it up, and if you want to just talk a little bit about what you did, and a little bit of the process that you used to animate it. Like, what was the first thing you did? You said you like using nature, and I think this is a great example of you can use anything, right? So
yeah, I literally went into my backyard, found some turkey feathers from the turkeys that roosted in my pine trees, and a lot of other pine trees. You can see the needles and the eyebrows, a couple flowers from my garden, a stone that looked like a nose. And I just placed them on the ground in some dappled shade. But it was fun to search. I like searching through nature to find things. So that was fun. And then I made just a couple different faces that were slightly different emotionally, so that I could switch between the two. And then coding wise, as you can see, I built a block. So I defined talking and gave it a length so that I could have the mouth go back and forth between those two, giving it a certain amount of time to do that, so that I could have that run anytime I had my person talking with a speech bubble, it would move its lips back and forth.
And I think that's a perfect example too of where the complexity of the project, even though initially designed for elementary school, you could do this through high school, especially from the coding perspective or the computer science perspective, because you might be challenging students to create their own blocks, right? Which you might not necessarily do with elementary school students, but definitely middle and high school students as a way of learning, getting a little bit deeper understanding of computer science. So,
yeah,
great. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And then, did anyone else from the Spotlight group, were they able to share something in the studio?
Did
that gardening one is mine.
This one right here?
Yes.
Oh, the gardening one. Great, perfect. So how do I animate it?
Just click that green flag.
Okay, clicking the green flag. This is awesome.
And that plate just spins forever.
Okay. All right, so I'll just see inside. Okay. Gonna stop. Okay, great. So I think this is wonderful because it gives us a chance to see you shared the plate and some of the objects that you created or collected, and then now we can see it used in the actual project itself, and also incorporating the element of walking too, which I think was good. Did you want to talk a little bit about your project?
Sure, I can. Well, first I can talk about the costumes. I was trying to find a way to have the plate stay on the body of the sprite, but I couldn't find, I couldn't remember how to make it follow a particular location. So I just edited it in the actual costume and copy and pasted it into the different ones. And then to do a lot of the back and forth of one sprite doing something and then causing it to do another one, I used those broadcast blocks so that everything would kind of move step by step, so that when Avery is done walking, it broadcasts message one, and broadcasting message one makes the cup come out of nowhere. And then the cup tips over and that broadcasts message two, and that makes the tree magically grow, and it makes the plate spin forever. So those were two of the things that were going on in here.
That's great. I love it. And the other thing too is that your project not only incorporates the face element of it, you know, but also like what are the things that you're doing, the actions. So like you're expanding upon that face, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end. Like starting with the face, you can explore so many different ways of helping express what you're feeling. So great. Thank you for sharing. And then Ariam, were you able to upload something or not yet?
I did. It's
Okay.
it's the Frazzle to Calm project.
Okay.
It's that, I think it's that first, the second one in the top row.
Oh, yep. Okay.
So you can just click the green flag and then hit the space bar.
Okay, great.
So I just kept it pretty simple. I wanted to add some audio. I didn't have a chance to, but I will.
No, this is great.
Simple, but very effective. I like it.
Yeah, and also just the cap, like going from lowercase to capital, like to you know,
Yeah.
like that's a wonderful, simple way of demonstrating how like sound can represent two different things. Like nice. This reminds me of my daughter. Like she'll be like and then she'll be like you know. So I also like the simplicity of just using something like the clothes tie for your, you know, a sandwich bag or something like that. So that's great, perfect. Also in here, just because I know we're getting close to the end, this particular studio was created by Leslie, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about or talk about one of the particular projects.
Yeah, why don't we do the knock knock joke? It's that was actually a project that started from early in the year. It was a boot up exercise that they did where they were learning how to code knock knock jokes. And here they just took out their sprites and then they uploaded the characters that they were using for the feeling faces or making faces activity. And they put it in and they substituted their little knock knock joke. So if you click the green flag, I believe it will start.
Yeah.
And then I like they changed the expression on, you know, when they started laughing, and you know they changed the expression on their eyes. So it was a lot of fun for them to do, and they loved uploading when they learned how to upload, you know, characters. They liked also the drawing area. So some of them took these faces after they uploaded it, and they just made bodies for them instead of using sprites from the library. So I think just some of the other ones. Let me see. There's somebody did a project on how they, where is it? How they felt about masks. I think it's just called Masks Go Up. Oh, you go the other way. So the third one down. This one, yeah, the third one down, just called Masks. So you know, you click the green flag. And they drew the body, and that's how they felt in September. They didn't want to wear a mask. They added some hair. Then they didn't have to wear it anymore. They weren't sure how they felt. And then they felt pretty okay by June, and they liked to be seeing their friends and enjoying being back in school.
And again, I think this is the wonderful example of, how this ties into the social emotional learning, because our students might not always know how to express like how they're truly feeling and what it is that might be upsetting them. So a lot of our students found the masks frustrating and didn't want to wear them. But then after becoming used to them, they were unsure about not wearing them, right? And so things like Scratch and Scratch Junior allow for that opportunity to express it in a different way, to help communicate what they're thinking, which they might struggle with in words or, when talking directly to an adult or somebody else. So great. I really appreciate these activities. So we're almost at it.
That's the great part about Scratch and Scratch Junior is it gives those wide walls. It gives them projects that they feel are meaningful to them. And whether it's, some of my bilingual students who could record their voices, who might have trouble reading, it really is a great platform for expression.
So I wish I could share all of the different projects that people are sharing in the actual chat on Swap Card. So definitely go in there and try some of the projects that people are sharing. I think is just wonderful. And hopefully definitely upload them to the studio, because I would love to look through them at a later point. And the studio will be live. It'll stay up so people can revisit it and check out the different projects. We only have about 5 minutes left. So just talking about this, like communicating with code in the classroom. These are some of the things that Leslie, if you want to talk to about these briefly, we can share this with the group.
Sure. This is, I like putting things on, when I do a slide deck for students, just things available in one place and with all the links that they need. So I like giving them examples in the studio so that if they decide, I have a very transient population. So some come with experience with Scratch, some don't. I like if they're able to remix just projects that are in there. They might just want to debug. I really love the studios because it gives a place for peer feedback. They could, help each other with it. It's a place, coding is an opportunity for doing things together and getting to know each other. So, there are just some wonderful opportunities here. We have, this is a bilingual student who, first grade, who isn't in the country that long, and he was able to record himself and, just showed emotions. They have mood meters where when they come in, they put a little clothespin of how they're feeling. And I think it's really important to be able to say, how are you feeling today? Because their emotions do matter. And our emotions, we have a myriad of emotions through the day. I think it's hard to hear it, but he did record himself. Yeah.
And you can definitely review those on your own with the slide deck, because it's linked in there. So we'll just go through a couple more of these. Which one of these do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is also Scratch Junior, where they took a project from a kindergarten student. Some of the kindergarten students, they pull out their crayons right away. They start drawing. A first grader coded one of the pictures that they had and added in the art area, added like little hands and put the background so they look scared. So making faces. So, they were amazed at just moving eyebrows around using a rubber band. Sometimes, it just really changed the expression a lot. Changed the emotion very easily. So we have a few different things, worried, delighted, pleased, and just being able to see what makes somebody upset, or, just being able to get that vocabulary in and being able to talk about, just being able to look at, evaluate, read each other's emotions, looking for those patterns were really important. And, just really good to learn, just connecting that vocabulary. Embarrassed, uncertain, annoyed. Rubber bands work great. Students really love the rubber bands.
I love the impatient one. So, and also this one using stickers too, I think was a nice adding here. But as I discussed before with Leslie, is that this also just brings in that expanding their vocabulary around feelings or emotion to help better express specifically what it is that they're feeling. I know when I was working with my middle school students, sometimes they were just like, I'm just angry, but they actually meant they were disappointed or they were, afraid, but the only way they knew how to voice it was using the word anger. So helping that expand it, because then it helps them identify and work through how they're particularly feeling. So these are some great ones. So
Yeah, and those.
So we're almost out of time. Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
No, that's okay. That I was just going to say that was from kindergarten, but being able to label emotions accurately, and they just really had a great time with it.
So it's our time's up. We never, with any of these workshops or sessions, it always feels like we could do so much more. I really look forward to seeing what people are sharing in their chat and also the studio. But before we go, I don't know if anyone from the Spotlight group would just like to add some last minute thoughts before we move on or before we end the session. So
It's been a lot of fun.
great.
Same, so much fun, and thank you for this session.
Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate the work that the Spotlight group did and the insight that you give. I think from a facilitator's perspective, we can always build and develop our ideas. But teachers like Leslie who put into practice really just amaze me. And I'm really proud to work with them. So again, the end of the slide deck, these are linked. So the coding with feeling unit is in there. The lesson plan for the making faces I have to work on. Unfortunately, I recently had COVID, so was out for about a week. So I'll hopefully have that in early next week, as well as a little video tutorial that you can use with your students or the people you're working with. There's also some additional resources, as Leslie mentioned, like the boot up tutorials for Scratch and Scratch Junior, as well as the coding as a second language around Scratch Junior. Also thinking about some of the resources you might already be using, like CS First, the characterization or animated name projects to help you facilitate a similar activity as making faces. So always check out New York City Department of Education's Computer Science for All. On social media, we're always sharing stuff. We're gearing up for summer training, so definitely have some exciting stuff out there. And so that's it. So thank you very much. And we appreciate everybody who participated in the chat. I love all the pictures. I'm going to go back and look through some of them now. And so have a great rest of your conference, everybody.